Shalom, shalom, peace be with you, peace be unto you, peace be upon you. We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we are presenting you with the following video of a documentary style series that we stumbled upon online in the public domain, public access. No copyright infringement was intentional or intended. We're only presenting this for educational purposes alone. This is titled The Biblical Collectors Series, Season 1, Episode 1. And it presents a ton of biblical history, scripture, said facts, and denials by many experts in regards to the scripture. We will compare all said or stated scriptural claims by doing a comparison on all said fact evidences with the original ancient very old Tav Asherah square or block script, Aramaic, Old Testament in the Lishana Articles of Prayer, the sacred scribal language of God, of which he spoke to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden or Paradise, and that the men gathered in the desert region of Shinar or Sumer in the east, who spoke that one language, one only to each other, while building the said Tower of Babel or Ziggurat. This original Old Testament manuscript in the original ancient, very old sacred scribal language of God, the Lishana Articles of Prayer, was hand copied by scribes, monks in Urhai, Edessa, now in modern Turkey, around 800 to 900 BCE, and it was preserved over the centuries by the original ancient, very old Apostolic Church of the East for over 4,000 years, then which became a revived Apostolic Church in latter centuries, which today is the modern Apostolic Syrian Orthodox Catholicos Church of the East today. The original church was grounded by the Apostle Adai, one of the 70 apostles, grounded by Thomas the disciple of Jesus, assisted by Bartholomew and Peter the disciple before his martyrdom or death by crucifixion upside down in Rome. This Old Testament manuscript was translated into the nearest English equivalent without added bias, prejudice, etc. by the native-born Aramaic speaking translator, filmmaker, Mesopotamian historian buff, Victor Nimrod Alexander, with over 20 years experience in translating those Old Testament manuscripts, and the hidden from the Roman Emperor Constantine and his empirical Roman State Catholic Church, preserved them for over 2,000 years intact. This is the Galilean Aramaic manuscripts. He's translated into the nearest English equivalent, which were never tampered with, altered or corrupted, or even translated into other languages as far as we know. Maybe the Koine Greek, which is said to be akin to that original ancient Galilean Aramaic, etc., which were originally given or handed over by the blessed hands of the disciple Thomas, apparently, to the appointed high priest of that original church, as testified to by 3 people, which then this would synchronise. These people don't know each other, haven't sat in the same room, etc. So it would become established fact. Attested or testified by 3 people. One, the one head patriarch of the church, Master Isai Shimon, 1957, and Victor Nimrod Alexander, the translator from Mesopotamia, Syria, at his now downed website, va.com. It was down for since about 2015 or 16, of which we found a way to revive or resurrect it and bring it to all via our YouTube channel, the Ministry of the Real Truth, and the Messianic Jew, translator Andrew Gabriel Roth, at https://www.thearamacscriptures.com. It was up there as a testimony for Mar Isai Shimon in 1957, but for some reason he took it down. But you can find it in one of his PDF or one of his books if you come across it. It's right there. within one of them. Okay, in this first episode, it is stated that Moses experienced saw a burning bush and is totally true approval. But first, we jump the gun. First, in this documentary, it says at the beginning of the episode, it states this. We'll play it for you.
Seemed at the time impossible.
Has the most famous ship in the history of the world been discovered at last?
The Gilgamesh epic paralleled exactly the story of Noah in the Bible.
There is plenty of ancient historical evidence spanning nearly 2,000 years that the Ark is on Mount Ararat.
So, we in our notes have put that the beginning of this episode just stated that supposed fact that the Gilgamesh epic parallels exactly the story of Noah in the Bible. This statement is incorrect, as one, if you've actually read it, the Gilgamesh epic of the flood, etc., and can recall exactly what it says when translated into the nearest English equivalent, or the English version, you will find the name for Noah is different. In the Sumerian it may be Upanishtim, or the Akkadian or Babylonian cuneiform text, Atrahasis, and so forth in other cultural versions. Even in the Mesopotamian it might be different. And the story details different to the Hebrew Bible or your modern Americanized English Bible translation retelling by the Israelites, Jews, etc. But in Old Palestine and the Paleo-Hebrew language, Noah was pronounced as something like Nga. Na, N'-A-H, Nga. And so close to the name Noah, when uttered by native-born Paleo-Hebrew speakers of that day era, it sounded pretty much the same. We have previously done and refound a video starring Irving Finkel. They're very funny or aggravated or funny curator from the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago, via one of his documentaries, Noah's Great Adventure, states that the said Ark of Noah wasn't what the church Sunday schools teach all today, depicted in children's Sunday school books about the flood as a watermelon shaped boat or a sushi roll, as he shows in the following video, with giraffes, elephants, etc. hanging out its many windows, but was a type of boat still made, used in Wales, etc., that he helped recreate and sailed down a certain river, lake. He's translated the original ancient, very old Babylonian cuneiform tablets or text into English to discover this and bring the evidence. So let's have a look at that particular video to clear things up from this point.
So, one of the interesting things about the version which he discovered, that 1872 tablet, it came from the library of Ashurbanipal in the 7th century BC. It was one of the king's own personal copies of his standard literature, although they didn't know that securely at the time. And when Smith made his very quick and very accurate translation, it included a description of what the ark that this Utnapishtim, the equivalent of Noah in his version of the story, had built. And the description comes out as a cube, that's to say an object which is the same height, width and length in all dimensions. So the clergymen, who were extremely worried about the way that the Bible had been undermined and what this might mean for the end of civilization, came back in force saying, well, this is rubbish, this is nothing like the Ark in the Bible, I mean, it's a cube, I mean, whoever had a boat that was a cube, it is mad anyway, and they had to take notice of this. And so they were impelled and felt encouraged to dismiss evidence which was unwelcome to them. Of course, they were operating on the assumption that the real Noah's Ark, so to speak, looked like this. I was rather fortunate to find this contemporary photograph, which is what we call research in British Museum. It's called Google generally. And here it is, exactly as it was, reconstructed in this image according to the text of the Bible. So the situation was that in 1872 and a half, there were people who believed in the Assyrian version, there were people who stuck fast to the Bible, so you had a cube or a coffin, but of course at the same time everybody really knew what Noah's Ark looked like. It's one of these things. There's usually a giraffe looking out the window just to complete it. So in fact, Ark fanciers, so to speak, have these three alternatives at their disposal. So it made it even more astonishing when I had the leisure to read this tablet, when it turned out the following thing, because the god Enki, who had discovered that the world was going to be destroyed, decided it wasn't a good matter and that he picked on some human being to build this lifeboat to rescue all life forms against the waters that would come. And it's always been a mystery actually why he picked on this Atran-Harsis, whose name means extremely intelligent, because however intelligent he might have been, it is clear that Enki didn't trust his knowledge of boat building at all, because in this tablet he tells him all the information you need to know in order to build this boat. In other words, it's one of those boxes from IKEA, which has all the information on a mimeographed panel on the side, so when you take it home, you can build it on your own. So the first piece of information that came out of reading this tablet was that the boat was round. And I'm fairly secure about most words beginning with K, because I worked on the K volume, so I felt that the word Kipatu was under my belt, but I thought I'd make absolutely sure that I hadn't misremembered it, because round boats are not something you tend to encounter in your normal life, until you remember, of course, that riverine communities all over the world have used round boats, which we called coracles, and which in Arabic are called guffa, and that in ancient Mesopotamia they certainly had boats like this, and it suddenly became a rather intelligible picture that for an old Babylonian poet who lived when he wrote that tablet in about 1800 BC, so it's 1,000 years older than the Assyrian version, in writing about the story, conceived of the ark in question, the boat to save lives, as a round coracle boat as people build on the sides of the river. And this makes a lot of sense, because the thing about a coracle, if you've never been in one, you will have to take my word for it. I've been in one once. The reason is that I'm the president of the British Coracle Association. It's not a funny thing at all. I don't see why you're sniggering. This is a major tribute to me as a person. I haven't got the gold chain. It's a bit annoying, but they promised me one, and I had to go in one. So I've been in one, so I can talk about this with a great deal of familiarity. And the thing about these boats, I know from many years of experience, is that they don't sink. And if you've got the job of collecting up all these male and females and putting them in a boat, it doesn't have to go from Portsmouth to New York. All it has to do is float. And the coracle doesn't have a front or a back, it just floats, and they float beautifully. So that is why the poet who wrote this story, trying to visualize the thing in a realistic way, decided it was going to be a giant coracle. It certainly was going to be a giant coracle. The surface area of the plan is given, it's 3,600 square metres, so bigger than this room. And in this IKEA list of instructions, he tells him of the materials he will need, that's to say, the rope, which is wrapped around to build the body of the boat, the ribs made of wood, and the bitumen to coat it inside and out to make it waterproof. He not only tells him he will need these materials, but he actually tells him how much of them he will need in order to complete the job. So this is where it becomes something very remarkable. So, this is what, of course, Iraqi coracles look like, or used to look like. The one at the top on your left is a fairly modern one of the last ones ever made, probably. And the one below that is the because one of them was a boy, and they thought that was cheating. So that's them, and then in the middle is drawn from a lantern slide, which was given to us in the museum by an old lady from her father's collection, and we had it blown up, and you can't see very clearly on this screen, but you've got two women who are doing the grand tour and have clearly been persuaded by some slick organiser of holiday activities to go in one of these boats and sample life in real, and they all look terrified. So the thing is that the coracle in Iraq is known in ancient times. It's on the sculptures, for example, but also from many anecdotal and photographic pieces of evidence from the 19th and 20th century as well, even though I think it's now disappeared. So the other photograph which I will now show you is this, which is from a pair of lantern slide pictures and part of a sequence of someone who photographed the construction of a coracle on the banks of the river in Iraq in about 1920. And here you can see, in principle, how this boat is built. And what you do is you have to have this great quantity of rope, and you have a pith. The pith which comes from the trunk of a palm tree, which is twisted and twisted and twisted until it becomes a thick rope, and it is exceptionally strong. And the basic way in which the coracle is to be made is you draw it out on the ground in a great circle, and as it comes back to the beginning, the next bit is laid on top of the previous one, and it is stitched north to south, and you go round and stitch north to south, and then the third on top of the second, and you end up with a great floppy basket. And when you've done that, you have to have ribs which fit round the frame, which is laced to the hole, and then the bitumen is applied. So something very interesting happened to me, probably unique situation. The central portion of this tablet is full of numbers and very technical, and I'm frantically innumerate. So I got a bit of help with dealing with the numbers, and I never built any boats at all in London, so I wasn't really on top of it, but I discovered in the library of the Ethnographical Institute in our museum that a man called Hornell wrote in 1920 an account of how these coracles are built, for which this is an illustration by somebody else.